The Dershow.
So a nurse named Neely Margolette, 40-something-year-old nurse, who was captured and kidnapped. She was hiding in a safe room with a group of other people from a kibbutz. She managed to escape. The others were all killed, murdered, burned to death, or shot to death. And then she came out and she was captured, not by Hamas, by civilians who had come following Hamas when Hamas went first, broke down the fences, started killing people. And then they were followed by these ordinary civilians in Gaza, these people that were shedding so many tears over. Oh my God, Israel's killing civilians. Well, let me tell you about some of these civilians. So this group of civilians came over and they killed bunches of people. And then they kidnapped Neely Margolette, a nurse. What do you think they did? They sold her like a slave, like a common slave, as if she were in Egypt or in the South during slavery. They sold her to Hamas. But before they sold it to Hamas, these wonderful civilians, these civilians of Gaza, they came out and presented her to other civilians, Gazan civilians. And the Gazan civilians were jubilant, that's her word. And they cheered the other civilians. These are the civilians that people are shedding tears about. These are the innocent civilians. No, so many of the innocent civilians, so-called, are people who were complicit in October 7th, came over and participated. They're civilians. Others allowed their homes to be used to store rockets. Others today are holding hostages. Civilians are holding hostages, guarding them for Hamas. And now Hamas can't get them back. Why? I don't know. Is it an excuse? Don't know. But when you hear that a civilian was killed in Gaza, just think, what kind of a civilian was it? Was it a baby? If so, then shed tears. Was it a 5-year-old or 7? What was a child? Well, you know what children are in Hamas? Counting? 19-year-old terrorists count as children. 25-year-old women count as women. So when Hamas says, oh, half the people were children and women, yeah, but how many of them were terrorists? So always think hard when you hear about civilians. If they're babies, horrible. If they're members of the World Kitchen, horrible. But if there are people who were involved in October 7th, if there were people who used their homes, if there are people who allow their children to be used as human shields, for example, the head of Hamas, 3 children were killed. Oh, all the stories, 3 children, his 3 children were killed. They're 35-year-old terrorists. They're not children, they're his children, but they are members of Hamas military. Then his grandchildren were killed. Why? Because they were with his terrorist children. You shed the tears over the grandchildren, and then you blame the parents for why they were killed. The parents are terrorists, and they're appropriate, decent, reasonable targets. So don't give me tears about the head of Hamas's children being killed. They're perfectly appropriate military targets. They were high-ranking members of the military, terrorists themselves, people who deserve to die because they killed. And so newspaper accounts, children, the children of the Hamas leader. Yeah, you could be 60 years old and be a child of someone, but they're not children. They're adult terrorists.